Hello, and welcome to another episode, a new episode of the Full Quota podcast. You can see the branding's changing, the music stays the same, some little things are changing, and it's a Full Quota podcast. My name is Mpho and I've got Tim Delace here with you. This is your number one South African cricketing podcast. We also have a new Twitter page, which is really awesome. So follow us at Full Quota Pod on Twitter. That's where we are. Follow us at Full Quota Pod. Please do check us out there. It's great. We are live on Spotify. We are on Spotify. We're also on Apple Podcasts. We're also on YouTube on the One World Sports Radio channel. That will still not change. And we're currently working on incredible things to bring you in the new season. It's a very interesting day today. We're recording on Monday, the 12th, which is really awesome. And Jeff there's a picture on Twitter of Jeff Tiana taking his Eastern's players on a fitness test on probably one of the coldest days we've ever experienced in Johannesburg in the last 5. So good luck to those Eastern's players out there. This is Benoni. I call it Son of My Sorrow, largely because it's a world of its own. And it was near the epicenter of the earthquake that somehow Gauteng felt that nobody else did. I slept through it, even though I'm probably closer to the epicenter and Benoni than anywhere else. So crazy things happen here in the East, but we're hoping the Eastern Storm have a good season. However, Tim, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, mate. It's cold in Cape Town, but it isn't as cold as you describe the Easterns. I've got an extra coat on, but that's about it.
Hold on, I've got a hoodie on. Okay, so currently it's 17 degrees, which is a lie. But I'm trying to get the Benoni weather, so people don't lie to me, because today it was wilding. Yeah, so I'll give you the closest one. So Benoni, the lowest was 7 degrees today. So yeah, that was like about 11 o'clock in the morning. So yeah, unlucky for them. It's still been overcast all day. But obviously with you guys in Cape Town, all you get is rain in winter. So it's a little bit weird, but yeah, it's winter.
Indeed. It is what we get. We complain, but it is what we get all the time.
Yes. So it's the South African Cricketing Podcast. We're going to talk all things South African cricket. World Test Championship ended. We're going to talk about that at the end of the show, and what the new cycle looks like. But in preparation for the new cycle, I think South Africa now, with the new regime and the new coaching staff across the white ball and the red ball, and obviously the new director of cricket, we were promised that there'd be an SAA tour. There's been an SA team. There was also a spin camp in Durban, Tim. I know we didn't speak about this earlier, but that happened too. So a lot going on in domestic cricket in South Africa. But let's talk about the South Africa A tour. South Africa A team is currently in Sri Lanka. Rob Walters and Shukri Conrad are actually taking charge of the teams this time round, and it's a hodgepodge of our youngest and brightest, as well as some of the guys who have done well domestically over the period. You've got Matthew Bretzka, you've got Jordan Harriman, you've also got Senran Mutusami, who's done really well today. We're going to talk about that later on, and Tony DeZorzi. And so it's a nice little mixture. We've also got Sinetemba Tlashile, who I think is like a lifeline to him in terms of getting him back. Cal Verena, a lot of the guys who didn't make it in the initial squads, who were previously in the Mark Boucher era, were being given an opportunity here to showcase what they were doing, as well as some of the youngsters, Devil Brevises of the world that you are looking for. The Tristan Stubbs, who I said on this podcast earlier on, he stole a lot of money in the SA20. Hopefully in season 2, he might give some of that money back, and yeah, it'll be great. But anyway, Tim, let's start with this SAA tour. We haven't seen a lot of these in a while. I think throughout Mark Boucher era, we haven't had an SAA team. I think the last SAA team we had was against when we played England. We've had invitational teams, but we've never had an SAA team. Oh, and the India one as well that we've had. But India requested that last year, or at the end of 2021. How important is this SAA tour going forward for the national side?
it's vital. As you will rightly point out, the SAA side has been put in the way, put aside, shall we say, for the last couple of years. Aside from that tour to India, we have put out development sides, we've put out invitational sides to touring sides that have been out here to give them a bit of practice, but we haven't had an A side to help us to see exactly who is where in terms of the next 11, so to speak, if there were to be injuries. So it's absolutely vital. I know how important it is for the current coaching setup to be able to see, particularly somebody like Rob, who hasn't been in South Africa for the last 6 years. It gives him an extra group of players to be able to see, right, okay, I can see exactly what the pool looks like, rather than just a select squad of 15, which he has to finalize and focus on. He now gets to see a much bigger pool of players with this A squad.
Yeah, and it's also not like it's not youngster heavy compared to what our most of the fans would be wanting. It's a mixture of some people who've been in domestic cricket for a long time. Zubair Hamza's in there, Keegan Peterson is there, Tony Dezorzi is there, and then you've also got some of the youngsters. Lutus Apamna is still there, Lazard Williams, and then you've got the youngsters, Joe Kutsia, Bear Swanepoel, who's making his way into domestic cricket, Jordan Harman. You've got Matthew Breedska, who got an opportunity. Calvarena's an oldie, so he's going to sit in the oldie camp. And then we also got Gwena Mapaka coming in after Lutus Apamla got injured. I like the mixture. I think the mixture is working because, to a certain extent, if I look at South Africa this year, Tim, and I think this is going to lead to the second question I'm going to ask you. There's a couple of questions, a couple of things we need to solve. One, with the World Cup in 2023 coming up, we need to solve the question of, essentially, I think Rob has a 10 man. So in his 11, his starting 11, I think he's got solidified 10 places, maybe 12, depending on whether you have a second spinner. But the question obviously is sitting at that number 7 spot, right? Do you go back to Wayne Parnell? Obviously, Dwayne Pretorius is now retired. And obviously there's other options like Vian Mulder, who's currently playing county cricket but may not have the same success in India. Keshav Maharaj is out for the tournament, so obviously that's another question for a second spinner, but it would be nice to have a number 7 who can bowl spin. And so there's a lot of questions around that, and what we've seen so far, and this is part of the thing, is that's the type of things that they're looking to cover, like the number 7 role or who the second spinner is, as well as possibly kind of filling out the gaps in the batting lineup for the batting reserve. I know Reza Hendricks isn't there, but in case there's an injury or something that happens to any of the frontline batters, the Bretskas, the Harmans, then come back into contention, and to also give them a sense to get to see what the 2027, and that's the second thing that you're looking at, what the 2027 World Cup squad looks like now. So effectively, these guys may not make it. Some may make it for the 2023 World Cup, but we're looking at the World Cup we're hosting at home. Who's next? And to a certain extent, that's what this tour is. And then the final thing from a 4-day perspective is solidifying what the squad will look like for World Test Championship 2025, which, in my opinion, I think we could make the final. But we'll look at everyone's fixtures and see who could make the final. But to a certain extent, I think those are the three things. It's confirming, it's adding people into the squad who perform well and answering that question, or especially around number 7 and the second spinner. It's looking towards the future to 2027 to seeing who of this crop in SAA will be there in 2027 and putting their hands up, and you can build around. And then obviously the World Test Championship 2025 cycle, and introducing a lot of these youngsters into the longer format of the game, such as Gwena Mapaka, such as Deval Brevis, such as Jordan Harman, but he's had a full season, but he's still a youngster in my eyes. Matthew Bretzker's had a couple of seasons here as well. Introducing them into the 4-day, the longer format, the Test cricket type of Protea play, the red ball play. What do you make of that?
I agree entirely. What is most pleasing as you rightly put it, most pleasing about this all is there does seem to be a direction. It does seem to be a 100% plan within what the players, where the players are, and their roles within the sides. So we have seen a little bit of movement in terms of this particular series, but they've been given. It's fairly clear to see that they've been given significant roles within the side to see whether how they respond to certain situations. For example, you talk about the number 7 role. That is going to be important across the formats for the Proteas. It's not just going to be for this coming World Cup in October, I think it is. It's not just going to be for 2025. It's going to be for 2027 across the formats. There are several options, but the fact that if we were to knuckle down to this particular series, the fact that Proteas was batting at 7 and bowled 15 overs in the series in the 3 games, that tells you something. That tells you that they want to see Proteas not just bat at the top 2 or 3 and smash it. They want to see him be a full 3-match player and contribute with the ball.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
fairly very clear to see that is his role within the side. I pick him because he is the $1 million player, if you like. He is the guy who's done well in the IPL. He's got people's ears up. So that's why I pick him in that particular. Yeah.
Tim, we'll unpack that a little bit more because I have another guy at 7 who I think could do a job there. And yeah, there's another option as well. There are a few options there actually at 7 for the World Cup. Let's go into the fixtures, and then we can cover the rest, right? So let me just take this banner off so people can see our audio, our visual viewers. I just had a bit of a banner there. So we just put up the results of the SA Tour to Sri Lanka. It's 3 unofficial ODIs that they're playing, and they'll be playing 2 unofficial 4-day matches. South Africa played. They've already gone through the ODI series. They won the ODI series 2-1. The first game, so that Sri Lanka A scored 264. South Africa won that by 4 wickets, scoring 268 for 6. Lutus Sapamla took 3 for 33, then subsequently got injured. You had Lazard Williams with 1 for 43. There were other bowlers with 1 wicket each. Bear Swanepoel, I think DB also took a wicket. Devil Brevis took a wicket there. But it speaks to Tim's point of Brevis bowling and batting. He both took 6 overs in that game. Brevis scored a 98 of 71 runs. Bear Swanepoel 43 of 28. And you'll see the theme of this series is lower order batting. Brevis was batting at 7 there, and he had a 113-run partnership with Bear Swanepoel. He also had a 51-run partnership with Netemba Tleshile, who scored 22 runs in that game. Second ODI, South Africa bowled out for 175. In typical South Africa World Cup fashion, Kevin playing against spin. You just come up against spinners and things just fall apart. 175 all out, but there was some rear guard action from Gerald Coetzee, who scored 77, with Tristan Stubbs, who scored 59 of 88. Uncharacteristic Stubbs performance there, but really, really important nonetheless, especially for those who are considering him as a lower order option. South Africa lost 7 wickets for 42 runs before this Coetzee and Stubbs partnership gave them something to bowl at, but unfortunately they lost by 7 wickets, with Sri Lanka A scoring 178. Bear Swanepoel and Lazard Williams taking 1 wicket each there. Final ODI, Sri Lanka A were bowled out for 172. We've got to see a Gerald Coetzee masterclass, 5 for 48. We also had Sri Lanka 4 for 7 at one point, 7 runs for 4 wickets. Joe Coetzee and Lazard Williams with a great opening bowling partnership. Mutusami took 2 for 42 in that game. Tristan Stubbs again with another 58 off 93 balls, very measured. Because South Africa were in trouble at some point, having lost a few wickets to go there. I'm trying to get that partnership number. There was a 74-run partnership between him and Senran Mutusami, so you can get an idea that South Africa about 100 for 5, and it was a little shaky, to say the least, at that point in time. But in that game, Stubbs batted at 4, and so that's what it is right now. There is one game on the go, and that is the 4-day game. Sri Lanka batted first. They were bowled out for 325. Senran Mutusami in that match right now, 7 for 122. One of the most insane returns of we have seen. Probably we can't see it because the live stream. Some games the live stream we could watch. Other games we couldn't watch. This one we can't watch because the link is like geo-blocked. But Senran Mutusami, 7 for 122. Gwena Mapaka took 2 wickets in that game, so that's 9 wickets already for between those two. But Tim, let's talk themes around these teams. Obviously, you want to win, and as a South African fan, and all the South African fans are there, they're happy with the win. Here are a couple of themes that are sticking out to me. The first theme, and we're going to expand, we're going to go to the other ones. First theme is lower order batting. Our top order batting really struggled on this tour, but it was the lower order batting. Deval Brevis batting at 7. People were angry on Twitter about that, but he came through with that 98. The other thing about Deval Brevis is the bowling. To a certain extent, let's actually do it like that. That number 6-7 spot, there are a couple of guys, and it's low order batting. It's Tristan Stubbs, it's Deval Brevis. Both batted and bowled, right? And the question is, if these guys, in a team that has an Aiden Markram, going to the 2023 World Cup, if one of these guys, well, either one, I quite frankly do not care. If Tristan or Deval can give me 3 overs or 4 overs in a ODI World Cup game, along with the Shamsi 10 and the Markram 10 or Markram 7 to balance it out, could that be a spot that we're fighting for those two batters? And the other thing is, I know he's not as talented as them. Senran Mutusami, is he putting his hand up, or is the batting gulf between the other two? Or how do you weigh up Senran's bowling over the batting for that number 7 spot? And is he another one, but from he's a much better bowler than the other two perspective? I think that's the other thing.
Okay, so I think we have to put the Tristan Stubbs topic to one side. He only bowled 2 overs at the series. I think his role is actually to be the next David Miller. Now, I know that's a big call. I'm not saying he's going to be, but that's within his role. Okay. I think he's going to come in the number 6 role, and he's going to be told, particularly in these white ball formats, go. We need you to make 30 or 15. If you make 30 or 15, job done. Thank you very much. Okay. I don't think he's going to be relied on with the ball. This series.
So then let's leave that number 7 spot out. Let's look at that lower order batting. Tristan Stubbs batted really well, uncharacteristically. But the other thing, obviously, from a lower order batting perspective, is Deval Brevis and Senran Mutusami coming in with the runs. How important is that?
Yeah, look, it's vital. We know about Brevis with the bat. We've seen it in the IPL. I think it's very clear that Shukri wanted him to be batting and bowling contributions, because there are going to come times when Brevis is going to make naught because of the way he plays. He's going to make single figures, and it's gonna be 9 off 2, and that's going to be it. So he's going to have to contribute with the ball. We've seen it in our domestic cricket. We've seen it in the IPL. He's a very handy leg spinner. I think that could be a masterstroke going forward, particularly if he makes himself consistent. If he becomes consistent in his performances, I think it could be absolutely vital going forward. Sen 6 reselection was a surprise to me, particularly with the options that South Africa had. They had George Linder, they had Bjorn Fortuin, they had several other guys that they could have picked. He's a good cricketer, he's 100% cricketer, gives it his all, but I was a little bit surprised in his reselection. That being said, I think Shukri will be very happy with his performances. I think Shukri will want him to contribute more with the bat for him to be a definite number 7 within the Proteas setup. But I think if he is contributing like he is here with the ball, I'm told, not as spin-friendly conditions as you would expect in Sri Lanka. It's not a turning square by any stretch of the imagination. I think he'll be very happy with his performances. And if, say, Harbour was to get injured, I think it's very likely that Sen would just come into the Proteas setup, providing they need that spinner. So it's two huge ticks for me. Brevis is becoming a complete cricketer, not just a guy who hits it and smashes it and says thank you very much. And Sen is contributing whenever he plays. He's contributing.
Brevis or Stubbs? Sorry.
Stubbs. Muthusamy is contributing.
No. You said Brevis becoming a complete cricketer. I just wanted to clarify if we're talking about Stubbs or Brevis.
Brevis because he's bowling. Because of his bowling, he's becoming an all-round cricketer. So Brevis is becoming an all-round cricketer. The fact that Stubbs had the performances with the bat is also another tick. I know I put him slightly to the side because I don't see him as an all-rounder within the Proteas setup going forward.
But isn't it important for somebody who's been in the Proteas setup, like a Tristan Stubbs, struggled in the limited overs format, to come out with a performance that is slightly different to what we've expected? We've always thought Tristan, as we've rightly said, is a David Miller reincarnate or the replacement. But if he's giving us, if he's able to manage the innings the way he managed that final ODI game, where wickets were falling around him, and he was able to eke out a match-winning half-century in order for South Africa to get over the line, and on the other end to eke out 172 as a total that's bowlable, doesn't that give him a case for 2023 World Cup as either a replacement or possibly that Heino Klaasen role? Because currently in my World Cup 6, Klaasen's in there, right? Obviously, you've got the top 3 of Bavuma, Quinton, Rassie, and Markram as a 4th, and then you've got 5 as Klaasen and 6 as David Miller. Does that not give Tristan Stubbs something? A case to say that, I know you guys were looking at Heino Klaasen, there's an opportunity for you guys to push Miller to 5 and bring me in at 6, knowing what I can do on the back end? Or has that ship sailed from 2023, but obviously definitely for 2027 and possibly even in the white ball?
The one thing in Stubbs' favour is Shukri Conrad. If we were talking about Mark Boucher, I would say no. I would say Stubbs will have to wait. He'll have to sit on the sidelines. Because of the Shukri's man management, because of his ability to be able to select people from outside and do it bravely and not interfere with the warmth within the setup, to not have it have repercussions, I think that plays into Stubbs' chances. I still think they are small in terms of 2023, but he does certainly have that chance if you just go on the Kyle Vervaina situation. So Shukri could say to Klaasen, you've done a good job, but I'm looking for something different. I'm looking for something a bit more youthful. and he could very well go with the Stubbs replacement. I still think that's unlikely, but it is possible. It is possible.
Tim, you keep on saying Shukri. It's actually Rob Walters, but I know, and I'm sure the viewers know who you're talking to. It's Rob Walters. It's funny because I think the way they're handling these teams is very similar, in terms of giving guys an opportunity. And the one theme for me, the other theme outside of that, and we'll leave Brevises to last, is the disappointments in some of the guys who've been given a second chance. For instance, right? One of the batters who are in SAA, who are in and around the setup, or lost opportunities, or may have possibly lost opportunities in the white ball setup, the Hamzas, the Keegan Peterson, who's trying to make a name for himself there, the Carl Varenas. Outside of those guys, I would say only Keegan Peterson's put his hand up with that 42 in the first game. Tony DeZorzi's scored a young 30, but I think he's in Rob Walters' plans going forward. But from a Carl Varena standpoint, I know he opened the batting in the one game, and maybe that's not his best position. But it seems to me as though there's a lot of work that needs to happen back home domestically for those guys to get back in. And I think the ship for them for 2023 has sailed, outside of Carl Varena being a wicket-keeping option, who can bat a bit, and if there's a standby call, he might be it. But how did you make of those guys' performance? You know, Carl played in the Netherlands series. Zubair Hamza's obviously come back from that suspension. Keegan Peterson, nobody knows him as a white ball prospect, but he was given an opportunity here. What did you make of their performances and how that went around?
Yeah, look, South Africa were 100 for 5 in game 1 and game 3. I think that tells you everything. It's all very well saying that Varane doesn't open, and that's true. He doesn't open. But when you go down a level, South Africa A is down a level from the Proteas. Yes. You have got to adapt. You have got to adapt. You've got to say, okay, it's not where I want to be, but I'm going to make runs here. It's not where I want to be, but I'm going to make runs. The fact that he didn't, I think it's a concern. It is a concern. You can make excuses for the Hamza and particularly Keegan Peterson, who's just come back from a long-term injury. So, he will feel better just to have spent enough time at the crease. Didn't score a lot of runs, but he spent time at the crease. Batsmen always tell you, time at the crease does you a world of good. What they will do going forward is going to be important. It's what they did here is less important. What they did, I hope they did with the youngsters, with the Kasiles, is they imparted their experience of being within the setup, saying, right, this is what you need to do, and just giving them that inner confidence within the team setup. So they all three will be disappointed at different levels. There is no doubt about it. They will be hungry to have scored runs in foreign conditions. Sri Lanka is a difficult place to go, even if it isn't turning square. It's a challenging place. The fact that they didn't score runs will have been a disappointment for them. There's no doubt about it.
Especially, it looked like the tracks were difficult for bowling at times, and you could have actually, if you applied yourself, put runs on the table. But obviously, that comes with everything else. Let's talk about Devil Brevis and the complete cricketer that he's becoming. To a certain extent, I looked at him and I looked at the other guys who played domestic cricket, Jordan Hanman, Matthew Brietzka. Devil seemed like he was a class of his own from what we could find and what we could see. And obviously looking at the scorecard and the consistency of his performances, you kind of felt like the other two may not necessarily be ready for that step up into that limited over side, but definitely Devil necessarily requires a chance, especially in the upcoming warm-up games, which we will yet find out who they are going to the World Cup. But has he put himself on the plane, even as a water boy?
Perhaps as a reserve, yes. I would say he's put himself as a reserve right away. Whether he's going to get the next, make the 15 is still up for debate. As you rightly point out, I don't think Markham's going to be dropped. So I think he's going to have to just bide his time. But he certainly will have made noises. Wherever he's been, he's made noises with his contributions. And the fact that he had contributed, he's got wickets in this white ball series. By all accounts, bowled well. Certainly, there's no doubt about it. There would have been pressure. There would have been pressure on him. There's always going to be pressure on him because of his successes in the IPL, particularly. And at the match situations that he found himself in the series. He acclimatized to the match situation, knuckled down, and he adapted. We talked about the more experienced guys not adapting to the situations and their batting positions. I'm sure Brevis would have said, I don't really want to bat 7. I'd like to bat the top 5. That's where I'd like to be. But he would have said, you know what? Okay, I don't want to be here, but I'm gonna make myself known. I'm gonna say I'm gonna score runs here. I'm going to make, and that's exactly what he's done. So he's gone and he said to Rob, the ball's on your court. I've made the runs, I've got the wickets, I've contributed with bat and ball. I don't think he could have done any more in the series.
So he's not good enough to go in that 7 for you. In a subcontinental World Cup, where you've got Shamsi, you probably might have Markram, and it probably gives you the opportunity to have a third seamer.
It's possible. It's possible, but I don't think it's an easy. I don't think it's a boom. Definitely, even if he made 100 in both games, I don't think it's a definite situation.
Yeah.
It's certainly one to think about.
So my worry is the wickets, right? Is the control. He bowls leg spin. Is the control? Can he get us wickets? I also don't want to be playing too many leg spinners. I've watched Shamsi struggle in India, and he will struggle, but we still have to play him. We need another spinner in there, and as well as Aiden Markram. So I'm thinking about this whole tournament, around 25 to 30 overs of spin, with Markram being your 6th bowler coming into this tournament. And in the case where you can have a second spinner in there with 2 other seamers, so you have 4 out and out bowlers, that 7th spot becomes really important, because I wouldn't want to go to Wayne Parnell, and I'm okay with Aiden Markram bowling 10. He looks very comfortable bowling 10. It's just then the question of, what do we want in that 7? Do you want a seam bowler like a Vian Mulder or a Wayne Parnell, or do you want to go with Brevis and have one probably less spinner in there? So you have 3 seamers, and Shamsi, Brevis, and Markram as your spinners. So that's the only thing I'm there. But from a batting perspective, also that step up, it's a step below. He's dominating that step up. We saw in SA20 towards the back end wasn't great. IPL, he stopped playing to a certain extent. The question is he ready for that step up? He's done everything at the SAA level. I'm willing to give him a chance in a couple of games to see if it works. And so for me, that's the question, if I'm Rob, that I'm trying to think about. And that leads us to our bowling. Gerald Coetzee and Senran Mutusami. Keshav Maharaj is injured. Has Sen done enough as a spinner to get himself more games going to the World Cup in the green and gold for the limited overs team? The other thing is, what do we do with Gerald Coetzee? Because right now it feels as though you might want to go into the World Cup with the Kutsia, Rabada, and possibly Anunokia pace trio as a starting 11. I know I'm taking Lungi out, but there's a possibility that that could be your pace trio at the World Cup. Lungi gives you variation, but from where it stands right now with where Lungi is with this team, I think Lungi is the incumbent, but having Gerald as the backup isn't a bad idea as well.
Yeah. To send situation, I don't think he's done enough with the bat. And I think that Rob would want him to contribute more with the bat to absolutely nail it down. We know he's got ability with the bat. We know he can score runs. He's made first class 50s. We've seen it, but I don't think at this level he's quite done enough. So I'd be surprised if he made it. Be that as it may, his contributions has been significant. Just in today's performance, in a Red Bull performance, will have done his
that's probably secured him World Test Championship 2025 to be the one to be that spinner if you're playing four steamers, batting and seven, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. So to put that one aside, we were talking about Hussein and Gerald. Gerald. Some months ago, before we took a break, you asked me about Gerald, and I said Gerald this is when he was going to make his Test debut, and I said it's just for the series, it's just for the West Indies. West Indies, right? Am I right?
Yes, it was.
Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah. It's just for the series. They want to see what he's capable of. And then they will take it from there. He has held on to that position, and he has said, "I don't just want to get a ticket and have a 1 week stay at the setup. I want to belong. I want to get a 1-way ticket, and I want to stay. I want to stay within the system." He has absolutely knocked the door down. He is seen, as you rightly point out, there's been one or two of our pace arsenal who have not been quite at their best. And he said, you know what? I'm taking that spot. Whether it's been Red Bull, whether it's been... He's absolutely made it known that he wants to hang on to the position. So if you'd asked me a few months ago, I would have said, absolutely not. There is no way. Too inconsistent, too wayward. He's going to be too expensive. He will get wickets, but he's going to be too much of a risk. I take that all back. I agree entirely. I think it is very possible that this could happen. That happened. He is a man transformed. I don't know exactly what was the switch. I don't know what it was exactly, or whether it just was the freedom to just express himself and just be himself and not have to worry. Maybe he was just told not to worry, just be yourself and express yourself. He could very well find himself within that 11. It is very possible. And if you look at the way that he batted in the white ball series with those runs, again, huge contribution. We know he can hit the ball. We've always known he can hit the ball. But he made runs. He made 77. So absolutely, for me, the sky's the limit for him at the moment. Sky is literally the limit. It's exactly what he wants. And he's in a very good place at the moment.
So outside of speaking about bowling, obviously the 4-day game is happening now. We're probably going to talk about it once the series ends. But Gwena Mapaka starting today. He's taken 2 wickets. We haven't actually seen any footage of what he's done. but one is a bold, and the other one was I think was a caught behind. 17 years old, making his SAA debut, not in South Africa or in Johannesburg, but in Sri Lanka. Um, I've seen him a little bit, very quick. I'm really excited about him. Everyone thinks he's the next best Kagiso Rabada. Please don't do that. He's a very good bowler, and it should be at that. Because Kagiso's out of this world. Um, and Gwena could be out of this world, but let's not put him that. I'm excited that he's there. Obviously, Luto is injured, and I think he's also another guy, and he's a left arm seamer as well. Another guy who can come in, and I think a person that people should be watching out for, because I think he is someone who next year, once he completes matric and is done, is someone who's probably going to dominate the domestic scene. And I'm really happy that he's taking wickets at this level, because then it tells me that this kid is pretty much ready.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't matter about age. If you're good enough, you're good enough. He was expensive, as you said, we can't see, but he was expensive in his first spell, but he's brought it back. If we talk about the Red Bull performance today, he's getting wickets against Sri Lankan international cricketers.
Yes.
He's playing against Sri Lankan guys who've actually played for the Sri Lankan national side. And that's a huge boost for his confidence. I think that it's always been known that he has the raw ingredients to be an international cricketer. I think that's been known for a couple of years, and that's plain to see. So again, let's just see where he goes. Let's let him enjoy the ride, and let's see where he goes.
Yeah.
Let's not put pressure on him.
It's going to be quite interesting to see how the batting goes with Sri Lanka having put up 325. And yeah, obviously South Africa went in with one spinner, but Senran took 7 wickets, so that's great. Now let's move on to our next topic to close out the show. The World Test Championship fixtures were released after India lost another World Test Championship final. So we're just having a look at the next cycle every 2 years, the World Test Championship, of who we're going to play, who we're going to see. The big issue for me, Tim, will always be we don't get to play everybody in this, and so it becomes a problem, because then you can't test if you're the best in the world, because I'm not seeing everybody around the world, and I don't have to play them home and away, but I have to play them once, and that's the issue. And in this next cycle, South Africa do not play England. They do not play Australia, and they play India at home. And it's disappointing from a revenue perspective, either home and away. Also a benchmarking perspective that we don't play Australia and England. But if I look at our fixtures, India at home, Pakistan at home, Sri Lanka at home, New Zealand away, West Indies away, and Bangladesh at home, we have beaten all these opponents in the respective conditions. So, for instance, we have not lost to India at home in a test series, against Pakistan in a test series, and Sri Lanka in a test series. That's not going to change, regardless of how bad our batting is. If you want to fight me, go look at the Sri Lanka series, the India series last year. We were bad then. We still made it through, even with King Kohli and the help of SuperSport. The New Zealand series is the tricky one for me, largely because New Zealand are a good side. But we've proven as well last year when we went there, even without batting that badly, that we can actually get ourselves a series draw. West Indies away and Bangladesh away should be easy wins for South Africa. I know the West Indies are trying to come up with something, and Mash will fight me on this, but I don't think they'll be ready for when we go back there. And I think it's a nice trip for the South Africans. Bangladesh is an interesting one, but again, outside of a sheer collapse from the South Africans, who supposedly may not be would if the South Africans are unable to play spin, that's the only way I see Bangladesh winning. It gives Shukri Conrad probably one of the, I wouldn't say one of the easiest routes to the World Test Championship final, because if I look at Australia have India and England, but England's always going to be a tough one. India's always going to be tough at home, away from home, and they gave them problems. They also have a similar road. If I look at India have New Zealand, Bangladesh, Australia. right, and England, right, and us. So there's more chance of India losing an away game than an away series than South Africa losing an away series. So for me, when I look at this, I sit here going, we're going to the World Test Championship final. Tim, do you think we're going to the World Test Championship final? Or if not, someone must be fired. That's my thing. If we don't make it with these fixtures, someone must be fired.
Okay, it's going to be very interesting for me to see where the West Indies and New Zealand are by the time we play them. They are both going through different types of transitions. Mm-hmm. I like what the West Indies is doing. I'm not sure I like what New Zealand's doing, but they've got a lot of guys who are old and they need to find their next crop of players. So it'll be very interesting to see what their teams are like by the times we get there. But yes, obviously, on paper, we have got an outstanding chance of making the final. However, we had an outstanding chance of making the final in this last cycle. In this last cycle, we had an outstanding chance. We put ourselves somehow in some miraculous way with some hopeless batting performances in the driving seat of making the final with 2 series to go, and we blew it. So I'm not going to say we're going to make the final. I'm just simply going to say, on paper, it's a very kind schedule for South Africa.
Okay.
It is.
I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it at kind schedule. I'm sitting here going, nah, guys, put your colors, put the stake in the ground. Come on. There's no way. There is no way. There is no cup. I cannot see. And we're probably going to be playing 2 test match series anyway. So we'll get those however many points. Like, we're there. Guys, come on. Well, man. Anyway, okay. Good luck to the Proteas. Good luck to SAA. That's the end of our show. We'll be back next week, probably with an interview or something else. If not, we'll be talking about what's going on, what happened in Sri Lanka, and probably looking forward to the fixtures at the World Cup that they'll be released. Hopefully they'll be approved this week, and then we'll be talking about that. Outside of that, remember, please do follow us on our Twitter page. We're trying to grow the brand independently, but still follow us on One World Sports Radio. Subscribe so you can know when we go up. We're on Spotify, so subscribe there. Or if you're an Apple person like me, Apple Podcasts as well. And yeah, just let the world know. Share widely. Full quota is back. Everyone's in preseason. This is our preseason as well. We're just walking through with the Proteas as they walk through in the Sri Lanka, as well as the domestic teams as they prepare for the start of the new season. From myself and Tim, it's goodbye, and until next week, le sale kakahiso.